This is the Great State Mural, Mongolia Portrayed, our bi-weekly podcast that analyzes the current developments, deeper structures, and the joys of contemporary Mongolia. My name is Anant Murtaga. I'm a journalist based in Ulaanbaatar.
And I'm Dolgen Aldar. I'm a development and research professional currently based in Phnom Penh.
And this is Julian Dirkus talking to you from Mannheim, Germany. Anna Dolgen, I haven't talked to you in some weeks. How are you?
Good. Things are. There's a lot of political movement in Mongolia, and mainly the dismissal of the mayor of Ulaanbaatar, which might be the pretext to the next civil war of the Mongolian People's Party, which will be today's topic. So,
Of course, it's the spring, so we need drama. Every spring needs drama.
Spring needs drama, but it's getting summer soon. I would say it's becoming summer soon. Okay, to start off, the three universals: a fight to I fight to survive, we fight to protect, and they fight for control. Okay, so for context, on May 16th, Prime Minister Uchral Nyam-Osor dismissed Nyambaatar Khisgee from his position as the mayor of Ulaanbaatar. Uchral blamed Nyambaatar for being unable to control the beef prices and giving control of the reserve meat, and was supposed to reserve meat was supposed to control the meat prices in Ulaanbaatar, and which the mayor basically blamed him for having companies that hoard the meat and spiking the meat prices. And also there's a context of other projects like the Tuul Highway, which was supposed to cease construction but was later found out that it hasn't. Uchral said that these people are mainly blaming the former mayor Nyambaatar for going into people's livelihoods have high meat prices and whatnot, and dismissed the Nyambaatar and ordered a special task force to look at other operations of the capital city. And Uchral has tapped Puruvdawak Birazun, secretary of the Mongolian People's Party and president of the Social Democratic Mongolian Youth Union under the party. And this dismissal, again, could be a start of a bigger dispute brewing in the Mongolian People's Party. And for context, as we record this, the Mongolian People's Party are I think they're gathered and will decide if Puruvdawak will become the next mayor or not. So we might have some addendums after this episode. Okay.
Remind me for further context, the Ulaanbaatar mayor, just like IMAC governors, is appointed, right? Even though we have a full electoral system of both sub-districts and district level and city level parliaments, for lack of a better term, the governor and the mayor, the executive power remains appointed. And Nyambaatar had been in office for how long?
Since
I watched this live, and he was proudly saying, "I served for 950 days, to be precise."
So just under 3 years. Okay.
Yes.
And it's the just pardon my ignorance on the different levels of municipal and other government, but it's the president or the prime minister who appoints?
Prime Minister.
Minister. Actually, he's not only the mayor of Ulaanbaatar, his full title is governor of the capital city as well. So he holds two kind of functions. First is mayor of Ulaanbaatar, of course responsible for everyday city problems, so he's responsible for traffic, waste management and all that. But as the governor, he responds, he's accountable to the prime minister. It's like a vertical accountability where he's tasked to undertake the central government's positions and policies at this capital city level. So he's both.
Yes.
And what is his relationship to the city assembly?
So the city assembly actually votes him in to the position. The prime minister can nominate him, and the city assembly can votes on that nomination.
And so they do have the power to reject a nomination. So it's not an appointment; it's a nomination.
Yes. So basically, again, the city assembly is majority Mongolian People's Party, and I don't think anyone in that assembly will go against their leader of the party. They might, but at this point, I don't think that's going to happen, and we'll probably see Purvdao get appointed as the new mayor of Ulaanbaatar. I think he's probably one of the youngest mayors of the city, if I'm not wrong. He was
born in 1990.
Yes,
he's currently 36.
Oh,
Yes.
the 90s are coming. Look at that. But of course, being, leading the youth wing, Namda is a traditional stepping stone or springboard to greater political office, right? There's been many youth wing leaders who have jumped very quickly into parliament or other functions. Perhaps not to mayor before, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Mayor also.
That happened in the past?
Party
Cool.
chairman.
I don't remember.
I was just looking at the pictures of those. I think Amr Sechan.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's a classic one, at least. And the others, I'm not sure. The most common example I can think of is Amr Sechan.
Okay.
I was almost going to pronounce his name Samar Sechan, that's his nickname. So I had to just touch myself. What's his real name?
For context, like Samar Sechan is in context of like scratching, and also the word for Samar means like nuts, and a person who scratches and destroys everything. So that was his nickname, I would say. A lot of Mongolian politicians have very interesting and poignant nicknames, I would say. Okay, so moving on to the big kerfuffle, I would say. Do you guys think that Uchral's decision to dismiss Nyambaatar was valid or not?
Yes, I think that's quite interesting. So, as you know, because of the Tuul Highway project scandal, there has been a public petition to remove Nyambaatar from office for quite a while, and it reached more than 40,000 signatures. So already there was a strong public pressure to remove him. But no one expected that he'll be removed on the basis of the reserve meat issue instead of the Tuul River project, for example. So I think Uchral was looking for very clear and concrete excuse to remove him, but which is not based on the MPP's already approved development or infrastructure projects to avoid any inside their party divisions, but he needed something concrete. So I think this reserve meat scandal is precisely that. It touches on every city dwellers, like the cost of living, inflation rate has increased so much. Meat is not just any ordinary product, it's something that's really fundamental for Mongolians' diet, especially the city people. And with recent price increases, it has been a huge question. We covered that in our last episodes. So I think that's his way of pinning down Nyambaatar within this bigger context of his unpopularity in recent years.
So your read is he wanted to get rid of him anyway, and then searched for an issue that he could pin on him without really getting the party embroiled the way that something like the Tuul Expressway or any other mega projects would have, but instead picking this very specific issue that also happens to be one of great concern to voters with the meat prices. I mean, it's interesting. The meat prices they pop up every year, right? Or
Yes.
twice a year or so. And it's one of these, the equivalent that I can think of is we've had this that's not even a debate, but this back and forth in Germany over the past 6 weeks since the U.S. attacked Iran with Israel and the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, and I think it's the same in many countries across Europe at least, that there's this great outcry from the public that governments should regulate gas prices. And then everything that governments try doesn't really work. And I think it's a little bit similar with meat prices, that there's this expectation from parts of the public that precisely for the things that you just mentioned, Dorgan, which is staple food, a big part, particular for poorer households, a big part of their expenditure, and therefore a huge impact on whatever remains as money within a household. So there's this expectation that somehow government take care of meat prices, but it turns out that that's not really possible, right? That even these attempts to build up a reserve which are really aimed at, right, I think price gouging. The reserve is meant to prevent people from buying up meat and artificially driving the price up. Is that right?
Yes. So,
but the mechanism doesn't work. But go ahead, Anand.
So basically, Uchral's argument was that they had over 5,000 tons of meat in reserve that would be put into the market and will be sold at 15,000 turks per kilo for beef, but at current rate it's sitting around 40,000 to 35,000 per kilo. And his argument was that there's 2,800 tons of reserve meats that were sold, and there's the 2,500 tons of meat that are just unaccounted for, basically. And Uchral's argument is that Nyambaatar needs to answer these questions, and also he needs to answer to the point where some companies have bought these reserve meats and maybe have some agreements with the government and supposed to sell them at the rate that the government have put out, but it seems as though they haven't, according to Uchral's statement. So those are the main points of Uchral's argument that Nyambaatar was unable to lower the meat prices and have basically put people's livelihoods at risk, and have played with other cronies to get rich from people's livelihoods of food, basically.
But what's interesting is also the former president Batolga, his company and I think his siblings' company were part of these private companies that were that won tenders to prepare, package, and supply and distribute meat reserves. So he was also questioned by the media. So in a way, if you look at the connections of Nyambaatar and his team and his allies, Nyambaatar was appointed in 2023 by Oyun-Erdene, the ex prime minister who was voted out because of the Gen Z movement and public demand. So they were all involved in this coal theft that we covered in this podcast as well. So if you think about Oyun-Erdene appointed him, Nyambaatar was a very popular member of parliament, but this time he decided not to run for elections for parliament, but instead he only went through citizen representative Horat, and very successful. NPP won the majority. They won 8 districts out of 9. Then there's this Batolga, some reason being involved. And of course, Amar Baysakhlin, the former chairman of parliament, he was making statements in defense of all of this group. So it clearly shows one faction, which is Oyun-Erdene and Nyambaatar's faction, being and potentially involving Batolga because of these connections. But of course, these are all alleged. No one knows for sure. On the other hand, Uchral, and we covered in this episode also who was promoting him, who's potentially the current president. and the current Minister of Justice, Ingbayar. So we start seeing these emerging factions before, slightly subtle, but now it's open in the public. And Nyambaatar, after his dismissal, he was doing his live very openly calling Uchral you, but referring the word chi, which is like the disrespectful way of calling you, like you younger, him, like.
Yeah, calling him batsan, like that's like a very like demeaning way to say like a younger person, like they don't know anything. I think it comes from like the Russian word.
Have you watched his live after his dismissal?
A little bit of I've seen a little bit, and some of his points are actually correct. I think you actually pointed out, Julian, that yes, how would the mayor would control the meat prices, and it seems quite ludicrous. And I think one point that he gave was very like pointed. He said that you're sitting in that seat because of the thanks to Oyun-Erdene's election victory, like telling him that he's a person who took someone's valor, basically. Do you guys agree on that point?
Well, ultimately, everyone in the party is in it together on some of these electoral victories. I mean, there obviously is the view of the factions, but in the end, even when they're infighting at the parliamentary election stage, at least they depend on each other, and so municipal elections spill over into that. I don't know. That just seems like sort of in-party finger pointing, rather than anything real. Dogan, you were saying, though, your sense is that what we're watching is the formation of new factions, a realignment of different people. Is that what you're seeing in this?
Yes, so I see that the more or less the temporary unified MPP during the 2024 election time has been shattered. And now this gap is increasing, the divergence is increasing. I'm not sure if before the next election, 2028, they will manage to bridge those gaps, or this will become bigger and bigger, and maybe there will be like how Ingbayar, the also former president, left and formed his own party. I don't think they'll be split to that extent yet, but it will be strong. I see that Uchral and his team, what they're trying to do, the image they're trying to give is that we're not these usual politicians. And Uchral, in his parliamentary question time, he very openly said, I don't make decisions behind shots of vodka, saying that I'm not the old-fashioned politician that you can just talk to me and make decisions. I make decisions based on principles, etc. So clearly, I think his job within the party, also as chairman of MPP, is to restore public distrust and to give an image that, yes, MPP is still responsible and still has a bit of ethics or whatever left, and the image of Uchral and this new potential appointment of the young potential mayor, who was born in 1999, Purutawa, is to create this image that, yes, there's a next generation of NPP, we're not out of human resources, and we can completely renovate. But this is something we see every 2 years or so. There's the cycle. And people seem to forget. Just 2 years ago, you had another set of faction who said exactly the same. You said you'll change the party, etc.
Oyun-Erdene was that the new young leader from the party that the president basically tapped and said, like, this is our guy. This is our guy who will rule the party, who will make the party great or uplift the party, which they kind of did in my eyes with their proportional list of voting, increasing the parliament seats, and what else? What else did Oyun-Erdene? I think he did a lot of things, but again, maybe Oyun-Erdene flew too close to the sun, and then maybe bit the hand that it fed it, and now they're just like at the point where Oyun-Erdene probably believes, and Nyambaatar and Amarbai's faction believes that they built this party. They were the ones who brought the victories of the 2024. Now they are the ones who are getting shouted out, like with Amarbay becoming the last guy who tried to fight the old factions and failing, and Nyambaatar becoming the last stronghold of the Oyun-Erdene's faction, who needed to go. And again, I feel like the Tuul River scandal should have been the thing that Nyambaatar would been the thing that Nyambaatar was needed to go. But again, like you said, that they don't want to have scrutiny over the big projects, and this is the big excuse from the meat prices that Nyambaatar's got. And I feel like there's going to be scorched earth in ways that we have not really imagined in my mind.
Anand is talking about flying too close to the sun and scorched earth. It must be hot in Ulaanbaatar. Anand, are you okay?
No. It's worse. Climate change is having a toll here. It's like so cold in the mornings. It's like really hot in the afternoons.
And thus all these heat metaphors. So I'm very interested in what you both have just said. As I keep sort of my list of principles of Mongolian politics that are somewhat peculiar and specific to Mongolia. And I add to this cyclical forgetting as a principle. And it matches every time we have a discussion about air pollution. We note that everyone forgets, basically from now, sometime in May, until sometime in October, November, roughly. So now we have a new issue of cyclical forgetting, which I think has taken hold, perhaps, but let me know what you think, but has taken hold particularly in the last 5 years, and I would say is rooted in the long-time generational turnover principle of the MPP that has always had this, right? This decade is supported by 2 decades ago, and the switch off. I didn't explain that very well, right? But the 70s support the 90s, the 60s, the 80s, and so forth. So there's been this long time idea of cyclical renewal that has been important to the party and has actually distinguished it from the DP, for example, which was stuck for so long in leadership by just a small set of revolutionary heroes, if you will. So now the cyclical renewal issue, the way you've both described it, is coming to sort of bite the MPP because it becomes the go-to justification for any kind of change that always says, oh, now we're new people, which is great when new people are brought in. But the fatal flaw of this argument is when it's just the people being exchanged and none of the policies or the structures change, then there's no change. So my question then becomes, this is fairly transparent. Voters recognize this at some point, that if you've gone through 5 renewal cycles or claim to be generational renewal cycles, and many things don't change, the subject matter, the corruption scandals changes, but the principles don't change. At some point, voters are going to say this is no longer plausible. But that hasn't happened on air pollution either. So I'm interested to hear whether you agree that there's a little bit of within the MPP, a generational turnover principle emerging in how choices are being made.
I would like to say that to that point is that all the other parties, yes, MPP has done those things, but they're the ones who have a solid foundation in terms of keeping their party together, even if there's like some kind of inner fightings, unlike the other parties, unlike the two new parties. Let's look at the Civil Will Green Party. They are in a huge dispute over who is going to be the ruler of the party, and then they're fighting over their stamps, and the old people from the Civil Will Green Party does not like the new people who are in parliament at the moment, and saying these people does not actually represent us, does not actually represent our power. They only stole it because they had money, basically. So there's like a division there. And there's the National Coalition, who's basically just a one-man party from Nyambaatar, who got kicked off from the Mongolian people, so which is another faction splitting off from the Mongolian People's Party. And recently, like the Democratic Party, which a lot of people have said that they would be like the opposition party, but they've shown that they cannot be in opposition at all. Like recently, where the biggest criticism I have of the DP is that recently the president proposed a law to call back ministers, call back the MPs, parliament members. And I thought that some of the people from the faction from the Mongolian People's Party, from the Oyun-Erdene, would vote against it. Yes, they did. And I also thought the DP would wholeheartedly together, maybe like one or two would agree to it, but wholeheartedly would be opposed to it. But we've seen that half of them did not vote against it, and then they went against their caucus leader, which just shows that this party is not constructively put together, and probably gives way to argument to Oyun-Erdene, who has been talking to like foreign media how the president is trying to take over the country in an authoritarian way, which probably gives a good argument to that point.
Mm-hmm. Now, Oyun-Erdene's faction's key argument against Khrushchev is that yes, his faction have, of course, it was like a battle. So executive. Yes, in recent last 2 years there have been battle. Okay, Khrushchev's people have won. Then they turned to the parliament. There was a battle between Amur Baiskhlang, etc. Then Khrushchev's people have won. And now they enter in what's remaining, which is the city municipality. So, and there has been battle. Okay, Khrushchev's people won. So the natural conclusion observers are making is that the key kind of faction led by Khrushchev winning. So in that sense, Julian, you asked about generational renewal, etc. And if you think about Uchral's political career, and just in the last 3-4 years or so, he held all key positions, both under Oyun-Erdene and Zandan as Chief of Cabinet, First Deputy Prime Minister. I don't know if anyone who has held all these key positions as Speaker of Parliament in just a few years. So I'm not sure to what extent it's really reflective of his own success, achievements, acceptance, and leadership as a young leader, or to what extent it's been supported or with the mercy of some behind the scene kind of older brothers. And that's exactly the argument Nyambaatar was saying in his life. You haven't earned anything. You always earn positions based on others' work. And now you came to the city to claim my victory. Previously you claimed Oyun-Erdene's in the national elections, and now you want to claim the local elections results from me. So that was very open. You just said it outright. But I don't think we should dismiss his capacities just because he's a young person in that way. But Anand, I remember you proposing the idea like last year, I think. Is Uchral going to be the next Prime Minister in this episode, right?
Yes. And well,
so you really foresaw.
Yeah, yes. And I said that he would become Prime Minister when things have cooled down, everything is okay, and there's no issues of there's like financial stabilities and all that. But again, there's like a lot of different wrenches have been thrown into the cog, and they just had to put him in, and not at the right time, I guess. Not at the time they wanted, I guess. And maybe that might be a good testing ground for Uchral and his faction.
So speaking of wrenches thrown, what's going on with the budget? It's right. We talked about a fair bit in the fall about a budgetary crisis. We talked a bit about mobilization, particularly by teachers and doctors, who were successful in mobilizing and demanding wage increases from the government. But at the time, it was relatively unclear to us where those wage increases might be financed from. Is there an update? Do we have economic figures in for the first half of the year, or at least the first quarter, that tells us anything about the fiscal situation?
So basically, the finance minister said that we probably need to do revisions as soon as possible. I think there is a deficit almost, and that probably also plays a key role into why Uchral also might have dismissed Nyambaatar and trying to control the budget, and maybe even taking in some of the revenues maybe the capital have gained and put it into the state budget in some form. Last year, Zandaşatır have tried to fix the deficit substantially. I think there was also like a deficit of the health of the health insurances, which was ballooning out of control, and I think he paid all of those out. So there is some issues, and I think Inkbayır from the deputy prime minister said they need to do kind of revisions and hold hearings on the budget before the scheduled time. So trying to get into the budget in order. And again, I think the issue with the fuel crisis have played a huge role in what is happening at the moment.
So what we have primarily is ongoing uncertainty. When we ask questions about in the fall what might be paying for these wage increases, there hasn't been a solution to any of that, and it's budget deficits just kind of being rolled over, and no particular visible approach, at least that we're aware of, right?
Yes, when we look at the overall trends, just not this year, the GDP growth in Mongolia is not too bad. Actually, it's like 4 or 5%, which from someone sitting outside the country, it's like not too bad. And of course, the revenue from coal and agriculture are the key drivers of this financing. The coal export is still ongoing, although the prices are at the moment quite precarious, which I think adds to this anxiety about the budget needed to be revised. But given all this energy crisis and Australia and Indonesia, the key coal exporters potentially reducing their coal export to China due to all these rising costs of transport, etc., might present more opportunities for Mongolia. But of course, we need to watch all the deals as they happen, learning from the previous examples.
But that's essentially relying on outside events or global economic events to pull yourself out of a domestic funding crisis, right? So as long as coal prices remain high, or perhaps even opportunities to sell coal goes up, that might fix the budget, but there's no obvious strategy that is aimed at reducing expenditures, for example, that would address this fiscal structure, right?
Yeah, especially given that the majority of budget spending is on infrastructure related costs. So that's also another reason why people were outcrying for more efficient government expenditure. Is this a time to finance all these mega projects and issue really inefficient bonds this particular period of time? But I was wondering when Julian and you, Anand, discussing about budget, like, is this directly connected to MPP's Civil War 2.0 as in this mandate, in this cycle? And if so, how?
So a lot of people online basically have pointed towards how there is a crisis among the MPP of finding the financing for the next elections, and they've talked about how basically the Oyun-Erdene faction holds more of the cash for the MPP, and given how large the capital's revenues are in terms of the whole country, it is in a way if you control the capital, you might also control the finances that would go into the party and whose faction that they can also finance. So again, when you are in the difficult position of financing your next elections, you need to find all the ways to allocate that money without any kind of issues of not bending over to people that you don't like, basically not like giving up like concessions. So I think that's why the budget comes into the play as though to finance the next elections and then not concede some positions to the other side of the aisle of the Oyun-Erdene faction. If that's a bit clear.
Anand, so what you're talking about is literally cash holdings in party accounts being controlled by different people and naturally being centralized on Ulaanbaatar as the center of and the locus of all economic activity, so that what you've been reading or hearing, what people are alleging online, is that in part Fight for Control is a control over accounts to be able to fund campaigning. Did I understand that right?
Yes, exactly.
And this is presidential, looking towards the presidential campaign next year in 27, or towards the parliamentary campaign?
It's probably the parliamentary, because the presidential elections are basically the DP basically just gave that election to the MPP by appointing this, I would call, disgraced politician Bayrzakt, who has been the main figure of scandals for the Oyun-Erdene agreement, who a lot of foreign publications have reported he had an offshore account, but it was acquitted on those charges. But he's not a popular figure, and it seems as though by electing Bayrzakt as the general secretary, they're teeing up him as the next potential nominee for the Democratic Party, which is, I feel like it's a losing position. There's probably better candidates for the DP for the next presidential election than Bayrzakt. But their argument is that is the best person they have, aside from Batulha, I guess. Which I think it's not a good argument.
I think in terms of the financing, the city budget is not obviously as huge as the national budget. I think it accounts for around 10% or slightly over 10% of the total. So in terms of the cash, just by amount, it's not as attractive as being obviously the Minister of Finance, for example. But to me, what I think is attractive for politicians to, and especially in recent years, it became the city mayor is not a fringe position anymore, marginalized position. It's become like a central position that high-level politicians seek out in recent years, including Nyambaatar, who was a former Minister of Justice, etc., is because I'm not a very public finance management expert, but based on general understanding that the city budget has more agility, there's less oversight, there's less legal kind of constraints about how to spend it, the accounting, the auditing. Of course, there are all these processes, but these are less rigid than the state budget. So that's why I think it becomes an attractive way to kind of manage, in my opinion. Secondly, there are also many other ways. There are allegations that just two people made decision to raise car transport tax in the city, for example, overnight. So it shows that even these kind of important decisions about city tax and revenues can be made relatively easily. The city representative Uchral, who's supposed to act as a key oversight body about the city mayor office to whether they're doing a good job, etc., is practically dormant. They don't do their job. So it's a position where, and the prime minister is busy with other national issues. So it's like a very comfortable and also you can show real impact and changes easily. So I think it's a very attractive position for upcoming leaders as well.
Very interesting. So what you're observing is over the past, we might guess in a moment for how long, but that the mayorship or the governor of the capital city has become a politically more attractive job role because it offers greater flexibility to enact policies that are visible to the public and lead to public support. So what interesting, when I think of Ulaanbaatar governors, the most prominent one in my mind was someone like Batuul, who became governor late in his career in the DP, in part because other office had been blocked to him, but tried to use, this is my interpretation at least, tried to use the potential link to a very large number of voters in other elections as a way to shore up his power. But what you're describing now is younger folks seeing an attraction in the governorship as offering more opportunities to make a political name for themselves. Did I understand that right?
Yes, I think Batuul set that legacy, in my opinion. Before him, nobody really, except Inchbald, who was the ex-party chairman of NPP, a significant figure. Many other mayors, they're not very prominent figures. You rarely remember their names. But then since Batuul, it became more popular. It became that a position someone can be remembered for positive results, not just negatives like Eichbold, for example, selling land. Since then, if you remember the most recent mayors, Amar Sahan, he's currently a high-level person in NPP still. Sumia Batar,
Justice Minister now.
Justice Minister. Sumia Batar, he was the former Minister of Mining, and also he stepped down because of corruption scandals, etc. More or less younger politician. And now Nyambaatar, who's in the middle 70s person, but he was the Minister of Justice, and he was not promoted, but appointed to this mayor's position. So it shows some kind of change in career trajectory for laying the foundation for perhaps future more prominent figures, or is more promising position for existing figures.
Yeah. I think the only person who and from the last mayorship who got unscathed is Amar Saha, who built the new highway to the distant district of Nazakh, which he usually runs in that district and always wins. The other mayorships, their popularities have fallen, and even Tuul, who, as you mentioned, could not even win in his district anymore. So there's and again, Ulaanbaatar got also he also resigned in disgrace. Nyambaatar got dismissed, and maybe hopefully the new guy does not fall to the same fate as that. And
he already promised to continue Tuul River project and everything Nyambaatar has been doing. So I think he already set the foundation for failure, I would say.
Oh no. Oh no. Okay, I think with that we need to wrap up this episode. So what are your guys' American take of the new civil war, potential civil war of the Mongolian People's Party?
I have three bigger principles that emerged in conversation today that sort of prompted by these very current events. But they are, and I mentioned along the way there, this idea of generational cycling as a justification for pretend political action. They are that the governorship of Ulaanbaatar has become politically more prominent over the, say, past 10, 15 years as a visible position. And the final thing is the MPP remains unsettled. This has been going for a year now, right, where the movement against Oyun-Erdene showed infighting, political factions and the like. There's nothing settled about this, even though we've had successive politicians claim that they were there to settle. How about your takes?
Yeah, so I think the recent events have really shown the fundamental kind of perhaps structural issues that we have in the countries, issues we still haven't resolved over the last 30 years. For example, this relationship between the executive and the self-governing body, it's still very hybrid, it's still unclear who's accountable for what, for whom, etc. So I think that we need to solve that at one point. Also, it creates this question about all this mega project financing, and is the country's economy is growing? We have positive growth over the last many years. Really, when will our politicians ever start at least thinking a little bit about more innovative, more sustainable projects rather than just the old construction infrastructure ones? And third, when will we have a real opposition? I feel like NPP has done extremely bad over the last few years, but DP even worse. It's like the case of the US. Where is the Democratic Party? Everyone's crying out for their leadership, but they're pretty much absent. So we feel like we see exactly the same parallel here. And I hope DP will get their act together and be a bit stronger, and rather than few individual star politicians, really act as a party, proper party.
Yeah, my American take would be as you mentioned, Julian, about policies and having an ideology of what the party should stand for, and I think and I hoped that the new political party law would find a way. I guess it will take time. The new party law is in a way it would establish that, but I guess it will take time. That will take effect in the future, and I'm hoping that maybe over the times that these parties will coalesce into more of an ideological, more of a policy-based structure, and not on individuals. And I can see that these parties don't really have like a cohesive mindset of anything. That the DP has shown it. All of these other parties have shown it. MPP is still showing it, but they're probably the ones that has a better structure of holding things together, even in terms of how messy things are at the moment. So yeah, that is my Michigan take. Okay, yeah. So yeah, with that, this has been the Great Steel Mural. My name is Anand.
And I'm Dalgan.
And this is Julian saying goodbye until next time.
And if you'd like to show support to us, be sure to donate to us at buymeacoffee.com/Great Steel Mural. It really helps to keep the show accessible to everyone. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you.